What a 24 hours, right? I've kind of been knowing about all this going on in the background just through various information places. But Stephen Duncan has officially left the Warsaw Panthers and has now joined the Madrid Bravos. I think this is the first kind of thing to ever happen. I don't think there'll be a 3-game ban. We've got all of the games. There's a lot of really good games, and we're going to break it all down for you today. But yeah, what a few days. Honestly, I've just I'm speechless of just the amount of sheer fuckery that has ensued over the last 48 hours. It's been such a busy period. There's still more to potentially come. Like, to Tuesday is the day that the teams have to submit their roster moves, so that we might see more. This video might have to be re-edited or anything. I don't know. My mind's gone. I've gone insane. Madness has happened. The ELF has broken me. It's week 4. So let's get into the video. I've gone over the edge officially, but let's dive straight in with the games. Alright, I don't want to waste anyone's time, so we're just going to get straight into the Rhein Fire and the Paris Musketeers. Of course, Rhein Fire 2-1 lost to the Bravos last week in a massive upset. Paris 2-0 have looked rather dominant, but also kind of got away with the win against Frankfurt last week. Keys to success for Rhein: get the passing game back into groove. So the passing game last week, the amount of injuries they have, they weren't able to get into a proper groove. Jadrian threw in two interceptions, and it was just, it never really got started. I think they need to get that back into gear. It can't just be Glenn. They need to get the passing game back involved. Hopefully they'll have more players returning from injury. Brian Winter's out, Sagner's not played, McKnight was hurt, so Hextall was only on a short week, Harlan Quofi was out. It's an incredible amount to deal with. So you just need to get that started again, and I think they'll be able to get back into some kind of momentum. Don't rush the process. Paris has such a good defense that you cannot just expect it to be a 70-yard one-play touchdown. That's not what I'm saying they're going to do, but you just got to have sustained drives. We saw that Frankfurt kind of struggled a little bit. They had the sustained drives. They didn't have the patience. They kind of went for some shots deep, and all of a sudden it's a 4th down. They need to just keep it slow, keep the ball moving on these short outside routes that really were effective against Paris. Those short outside routes from Kevin Kea really hurt them, and I think Ryan can have a similar kind of success. Testing the ball security. Paris fumbled the ball a lot, 3 times in the first half. They need to get the ball out. They have big physical linebackers, Flamor Zimon, Maris Kenzie. They have turnover capable players like Amari Williams. They have defensive ends with bend and with long arms like Saleh, or with like Parkinson, who can get their hands on Edwards and force that ball out. They have a very, very stout defense still. So I think that that's going to be a big part of it, of just trying to get the ball out from Paris's hands. In the same breath, for Paris, keeping the ball safe. You can't have 3 fumbles in one half and win a football game very often. They got a little lucky with that Frankfurt weren't able to capitalize off those turnovers, but one of them did go for a touchdown. The other one, I think, was for a field goal at the end of it, and then the third in the first half was just, a drive killer that didn't allow them to get points before the half, even though they were in the red zone. They cannot have that happen again. Rhein Fire are a much better team in the Galaxy, and they will be able to capitalize on those turnovers. So just keep the ball safe. Forcing his throws. By this, I mean forcing bad decisions and allowing this amazing secondary that Paris do have to create turnovers. We saw Chandler Jones had a bit of a breakout in the last game with 2 interceptions. One of them was disallowed, so he had 3 catches on the day technically, but just one of them was called for a penalty. They need to force the deep balls that they can get on contests with, because Marcelo Beard's a turnover machine, and Ryan do have a depleted receiver core. So force the throws that perhaps Haaland might have been able to catch, but one of these backup players can't, and you have Beard ready to force a ball out, tip it into someone, or just create turnovers defensively. Stop momentum early. If you let Jadrian go to work behind that amazing offensive line, he's going to shred any team in this league, regardless of the receivers that he has. So you need to stop the momentum, create those turnovers early, like Frankfurt did against Paris, and just get the upper hand from the very beginning. Once you get that lead, I think it's going to be hard for them to give it up, because of the current situation. Which you saw the same with Madrid. Once they got that lead, it was hard for Rhein to get over that. I think that's going to be a big part of just securing that early. This game is so hard to call from a scoreline basis and from a who's going to win kind of basis. I'm leaning towards Paris just because they have less injuries. They're coming off a bye week at the start. Again, it's so tough. I just think they have a little bit more to offer at the moment. So I'm going to go for a 28-24 victory for Paris. No disrespect to Rhein, of course. They're still one of my favourite teams. But man, those injuries are killer. They really are. So I'm going to go for Paris just to win it on a bit of a nail-biter. But I wouldn't be surprised if Rhein Fire win either. Madrid Bravos versus the Cologne Centurions. Of course, Madrid had a massive rise in the power rankings with that big win over Rhein. Quarterback questions though. Duncan's coming in, short week, doesn't know the playbook, has had struggles in the last couple of weeks, which the Vosaf fans are very vocal about, but I still think the Duncan's an elite quarterback. But it's a short week. It's going to be hard to adjust to that. It's a different team, it's different weapons, it's a different offensive line, it's different everywhere. So he needs to be able to adapt to that, and that's going to be a question of how he deals with that. Obi all the way. Obi's going to get that ball a lot. He's a definition of a third down back. I was saying about it last year when he was at New Yorker. Obi can do it all, and I think they're going to expect him to do it all. He's going to be running, he's going to be catching. He's such a big, powerful running back that he drains defenses of just their whole stamina like that. He's so hard to tackle. We saw the same with Rhein. And the inside push from the Madrid Bravos was incredibly impressive. I think he's going to get 20-30 carries. I think he's going to go for 150-200 yards. And I think he's going to have a big day. He's probably my favorite for offensive player of the week. I think that he could very easily get that. Cologne don't have an elite defense, an elite size in the defense. I think he's going to be a big part of running over them. Sitting in zone, Weed has not had the most success in the pass game. We'll get to that in a second. And they have an incredibly good zone system. Madrid have speed at the linebacker position. They have flexibility at defensive back. They have turnover creators. We saw that with Jalen Embry and how good he looked last week. He's a player that I thought could have been a defensive player of the week. They have zone players. They have a great rush that allows it. Weed has struggled with identifying the coverage, I think, a little bit more. So you give him a man coverage look, it's a little bit more simple to identify. You give him a zone look, like a cover 2 or a cover 3, and I think that'll be a really, really big problem for Cologne to overcome. For Cologne to win, I think they need to keep the run going. Jared Alman has been successful. Isaiah Weed is good with his legs. They've had hit and miss. It kind of takes them a while to get that big run. It's 1 yard gain, 2 yard gain, 3 yard gain, 4 yard gain, 1 yard gain, and then 20 yard gain. They just need to get those explosive plays a little bit earlier, and I think just keep hammering away basically at this Madrid defensive front. Weed needs to hit more form with passing. Now Cologne are also depleted at the receiver position. They're without Hagi, they're without a couple of players they had last year, like Paul Lenhart, who would have been impactful for them. They need to just get the ball to Weddington. They need to use the receivers on short routes and just get the ball into their hands. The offensive line for Cologne isn't fantastic, and we need to be able to be a little bit better at picking defenses apart, in my opinion. Stack the box, Obi's going to be busy. Like I said, 20-30 carries a game is what I'm expecting from Dwayne Obi. You've got to try and stop it. Just stack the box of linebackers and defensive front. They're going to have to go heavy with it. Madrid do have extremely fast receivers and extremely capable receivers at pretty much every spot, so it's going to be hard to really contain it, but Obi is going to be the main focus due to the quarterback situation. Are they going to be able to do it? I'm not so sure. I'm going to go with a 41-14 victory in favor of Madrid. They've got every ounce of confidence you could possibly want from a franchise. I think that'll be very noticeable in this game. Moving into another game I don't think people were talking about enough. The Berlin Thunder against the Vienna Vikings. So this one's incredibly interesting because Berlin are just kind of a team that I've said are the outside looking in. They have some talent, but not enough to compete with the top 5. Vienna, at the moment of this recording, have not clarified if Rochelle's going to be starting a quarterback or if they're going to get an A in to replace Ben Holmes for a couple of games. We don't know yet. I might have to edit this in or put a comment section. I'll put a pinned comment if they do change anything up while this is uploaded. But Berlin need to get the ball out fast. Sullivan is a player that can get hot and tear people apart, but if he gets cold, we'll get about that in a minute. They just need to get the ball out fast. The offensive line for Berlin has been hit and miss. They need to dink and dunk, I think. That's going to be very important for him. Sullivan hasn't been great under pressure sometimes at some points in his ELF career. And I think with the Vienna Vikings' outstanding defensive front, it's going to be important you get that ball out fast. On the flip side, they have a lot of defensive pressure that they can send at Vienna. Kyle Kitchens, obviously. Emil Forster, they have a good interior defensive line. They've got good linebackers that can be creative. They've got a very good defense that can cause turnovers as well as rush the passer. And sending a lot of pressure at potentially a homegrown quarterback or a quarterback coming off a short week of the playbook is going to be an absolute. This Berlin team is a rack team. Bias Hyundai, Roman Vilcek, Aaron Jackson, all players that thrive off of rack yardage, and that's been our identity all this year, and they've been very successful at it, and I think that's going to continue in this one. These big plays off of a 5, 6, 7, 8 yard slant that go for 60. We've seen it over and over and over again. Teams haven't really been able to stop it that much. Wrocław struggled with it. Vienna, I think, are going to struggle with it too. For Vienna, get Sullivan cold, send that pressure at him immediately, make him uncomfortable. That's going to be such a big part of it. They have such a good defensive front. I'm going to skip over the heavy run offense first for a second, just so I can talk about keep sending pressure from all angles. The defensive front for Vienna was absolutely fantastic, just in terms of how it was designed, the plays they ran, when they ran them, how they sent the pressure. It was a clinic of defensive line. And they have one of the best defensive lines in Europe. They've got Leon Bull, they've got Jan Bombach, they've got they've got Schaefer in the interior, they've got players they can send off the edge, they've got players they can send off the middle, they've got Lalo, who was amazing from those corner blitzes and for the nickel blitzes. They need to do that again. I want to see that again. It's going to be fantastic to see if they can do it. I think they can. I think that's blitzes is going to be a big part of how Vienna built this defense. Heavy run offense, callback situation, unsure, Kerry Buchanan, elite running back, just get the ball to Kerry. He's going to be a big part of it. He was a team offensive player of the week in 1 week. He's had over 100 yards, I think, in every game. And he's just an effective running back. And with an extremely effective run offensive line. So it makes sense just to relieve some pressure off of Rochelle or whoever they bring in by having Carey take the majority of the payload. It's very similar to the Madrid situation. I think we're in for another low-scoring one, very similar to the Wrocław game with Vienna. I'm going to go for a 17-7. Very low-scoring, but I think we'll have another one of those kind of games. Another very interesting game. Helvetic Mercenaries versus Barcelona Dragons. Now this one's interesting for a different reason, because it's two bad teams playing against each other and one of them has to win. It's also a rematch of the previous win that Barcelona had. Keys to success for Helvetic: protection. Please. Carlton Aiken has no time. Absolutely no time. He can't get anything started. The run game can't get any yardage at all because the protection is so bad. It is absolutely imperative they improve in this, otherwise they will never get a win in the ELF. And for a team that's rebranded, it's unacceptable. To be honest, not get wins. They absolutely need, this is one of the very few chances they're going to get to win a game. They have Barcelona, they have Milan. That's the two teams they're going to beat. If they don't win here, they've only got one game. Their best case scenario is 2-10. Their worst case is 0-12. Their defense is really good. Just they need to protect Carlton Aiken. Speaking of defense, Haig needs to travel. They had him on Flores Calderon the whole game. They move Flores Calderon over to the other side. They don't move Ken Haig over, and Flores Calderon gets a long touchdown. If Ken Haig wants to move, let Ken Haig move. He is an island corner. He can put people on just as a lock. like 0 catches. And Barcelona have done a Deli, who is a very hard matchup. I think Ken Hike could win that matchup. Let him move wherever. Follow the American. Follow whoever's hot. Give Levi Lewis something to really be scared of. Because don't look at Ken Hike was the advice I gave to Milan. They didn't take that advice and they ended up throwing a pick. Ken Hike's that guy. They cannot have drops though. Offensively, a lot of drops. Carlton Aiken is going to have to get the ball out fast. He's going to have to get the ball out within a second, probably. Otherwise, he's going to get a lot of pressure. He's going to get sacked. The receivers need to pull their own weight. AFB, Anthony fucking Brown, wasn't as good in this game as he was in the previous. And he needs to be the guy to step up. You know, it's a lot of weight to put on him, but the other receivers also drop balls. So it's not just AFB, but you know, if the offense is so limited because of the offensive line, the receivers need to pull their weight and reel in the ball. For Barcelona, the defense has a lot of holes in zone, man. I was watching the Raiders-Tyrrell game, and the Raiders just picked them apart with zone coverages. They sat in zone for the majority of the game. They just got shredded everywhere. They need to either tighten that up or diversify the defense. Protection, double please. Same thing as Helvetic. Bad offensive line plays cost them a lot of points. They have got a win against the Mercs in the past. I think that'll go a long way, but neither of those protections was very good, and neither of them has been good this season. So they need to get Levi Lewis any kind of time, because he showed the flashes against the Raiders. He showed flashes, but he's just not able to get to work. 3-3-5 in centre house. I think they'll have a lot of success with nickel and dime packages. You know, you don't need 4 players to get through that mercenaries line. Like, you could send 2, honestly, and you could get through and put some pressure on Aiken with just how poor the offensive line has been. You can send 3, have 3 linebackers, send some people off the edge if you need to, and have 5 DBs to cause turnovers. Aiken threw 3 turnovers in the last game. I think that'll be a big part for Barcelona. It is causing the turnovers. They have good corners. They have Shelton. They have Adisa. They have Frencher. They need to get these guys involved. They need to have players who can cover in a slot and force these short passes. They're going to have to go short passes, because developing routes that are longer and intermediate aren't going to work for the mercenaries. They're going to have to throw short. Barcelona know this, so play nickel and play dime. I think that will go a really long way. However, I'm going to go for Helvetic winning. I think they split the series. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if Barcelona win, honestly. But they just got absolutely shit stomped 63-7. So it's kind of hard to pick them at the moment. I'm going to go for a 25-22 victory in favour for the Mercenaries. Jamal, I'm sure you're very happy with that. A game that's going to be a lot less close. Milano Seaman, Stuttgart Surge. Milan coming off a big win. Surge coming off a bye week. You know, that could play a part. I don't think it's going to. But for Milan, they need to get the run game started, man. They've invested in the running backs with American, with Patrick Carr. Buda and him are very similar in their physical run style. It's just not worked. I don't think they've got one big run yet. So they need to get that started. Otherwise, Surge are just not going to respect them at all. JFC Flores Calderon cannot be exclusively on X. We saw it all last season. He was basically just on X. We saw at the start of this half of the year, he's been only on X. They started moving him around and he got scores. They need to move him out to Y. They need to get him off that American corner. Like, they need to. Flores Calderon's an excellent receiver, but he's not a number 1 in the league. They need to have him schemed open. Whether you put him in the slot, taking carries, put him as X, Y, or Z, I don't care. Put him everywhere. Cannot have him play in one position, otherwise Helvetic is just going to lock him up. Heavy fronts. There's not really much you can do on both sides of the ball here, right? So you need offensive line they're going to protect, so get tight ends in. Play 2 tight ends, play 3 tight ends, play 4 tight ends, play fullbacks and tight ends. I don't care. Run heavy. They need to have more bodies in the box that Stuttgart double up, try and get some of these gaps. On a reverse, Stuttgart have a good run game this year. Get heavy on the D-line, send pressure, send blitzes. You can't just roll over and die. You have to try and get something. For Stuttgart, inside pressure. Their interior defensive line has been phenomenal. The interior offensive line of Milan is bad. So it makes sense that they would send a lot of inside pressure at Bronkenhurst, who has struggled with pressure and thrown a lot of interceptions. And fumbles as well have been a problem for it. And the run game is also going to be coming predominantly on the inside just because of the lack of offensive creativity in that department. It's going to be a big one. I think that they're going to dominate the inside of the field. It's kind of like chess, where you take the middle of the field. I think if you take the middle of the field in football, you're more than likely going to win. I think that's what I will kind of liken it to. Pick apart the defense. Hennessy knows how to pick apart defense. Of course, we saw him do it, all this year so far. He's going to be able to have time. The offensive line is great. The defensive line for Milan isn't. The linebackers for Milan aren't the best in pass coverage. They're all right, but they're not great. And Stuttgart have some of the fastest and best receiver core in Europe. So he's going to be able to take his time, pick his places. He doesn't need to get reckless. I think he'll have a turnover-free game. Keep their defense on the field. We saw that Munich and the Raiders had a lot of success in just keeping Milan's defense on the field. Milan's defense is good, surprisingly good. But when they're dealing with a bunch of plays, a bunch of drives, a long, tiring drives with running and tackling and coverage, they run out of gas, as expected. So I think that Stuttgart are going to do that. They're going to have these long, sustained drives. Like I said, pick them apart, be careful, don't rush, keep the defense on the field and just tire them out. And eventually they'll crack a big score. I think they're going to win 50-0. I can't see Milan doing much at all, to be honest. It is a shame, but I think that's going to be the case. Boy, am I excited for this game, because it's going to be extraordinarily interesting to see how the Wrocław Panthers deal with it. They're playing the Frankfurt Galaxy. Both of these teams in major need for a win. This might be one of the biggest scheduling games of the whole season, just because both of them need a win. It's absolutely imperative. For Wrocław, drops in offense. Duncan's just been released. They've got Youtubre. I don't know how that's going to work. He was fine in this game in 2022. He only played one game for the Panthers. But Duncan was unfairly treated with the drops. Bender is on IR. Matt Cole is back. I praise Matt Cole a lot. But, they need to catch the ball. I do think that Duncan made some bad decisions in the last game. But he was not helped by the drops in offense. Heavy run still. Keeping a heavy run. Landa is one of the best OCs in the league. I think that he's great. I think he's ran a very good offense. They're averaging a bunch of points per game. And the heavy run has been a part of it. They got Zozo. They've got Adams. Keep running with them. There's no need to stop. They kind of stopped a little bit in the last game. They weren't really getting Adams the ball from behind the line of scrimmage, and I think that was a mistake. Keep heavy run. You got a call back in on a short week. Just rely on the run. And also Frankfurt is more in the box. You saw how they struggled with Glenn. So I think they could have similar success just wearing them down. Sustained defense. And this is harking back to the Surge game. And also a little bit to the Vikings game. The Wrocław Panthers defense tires out in the second half. They'll be excellent for the first half. And then they start to wear down. Not all of them. AJ Wentland is still an incredible linebacker. He doesn't tire out. He's got a motor that goes for days. But the rest of them do. And they've conceded a lot of points in the latter half of games. And not been able to lock up. Flags, discipline has come into play. They need to sort that out and have more of a sustained defense. For Frankfurt, too many turnovers. Luke's thrown multiple picks. He's thrown a pick in every game he's played so far. Fumbles. Interceptions. Missed kicks also I'm going to count as turnovers. Cannot happen. It's too much. It's happening too much. It's destroyed their offense at the moment. And in the same regard, finishing drives. Whether that's turnovers or, like I mentioned with Paris, trying to rush it and all of a sudden it's fourth down and you've got to kick a 40-yard field goal. And then not kicking the field goal, finish the drives. And they would have had a pretty comfortable win if they did that. Same with their loss against Rhein. If they finished the drives, rather than throwing picks or just kind of running out of steam, they could have won that game. There's an alternate universe for the Galaxy at 2-0. But they're not, they're 0-2. More pass rush. They haven't been getting home enough for my liking at the pass rush positions. And we saw that the Panthers had some pass rush issues. They couldn't contain the defensive line of Vienna. They struggled mightily. I think there was 10 sacks. Something ridiculous. Ball got 5. Lala got 2. I think Schaefer got 2. There's a lot of sacks. And Frankfurt could really utilise that, and they could really take advantage. Ultimately, I'm going to go for a Frankfurt win. I think it'd be quite comfortable. I'm not a fan of them releasing Duncan. I'm going to be very clear. I think that's a bad mistake. So I'm going to go for a 30-13 victory for Frankfurt. And then I think that Wrocław have a lot to kind of look at in just what they expect from this season. Another very interesting game. I called this a bit of a mid-off on ELF Live because both teams are 2-1. Both teams have kind of lacked a top-level performance. Munich, of course, got absolutely destroyed by the Surge, but now being beat up on, Milan and Prague. So they've been successful, but also beaten up on bad teams. The Raiders really need to look at what they expect from this season. People that I've talked to have said they expect a championship. They're not going to win a fucking championship. I'm going to be straight up. The Raiders tier are not going to win a fucking championship. No hope in hell. I'm going to be very very expressive on that one. I do not think the Raiders tier will have any chance of winning a championship in 2024. I think last year's team was a lot better. This year's team was a lot worse. They lost to multiple players at key positions. Their offensive line's worse. They've got more drops. I could go on and on. However, Munich Ravens' keys to success. Time to step up. We've seen them play against a top position. They failed. They need to have a step-up performance against a team that is considered as just on the outside looking in the playoffs. They're also in the same fucking division. They need to win here. No questions asked. Pass rush pressure. We saw a lot of their pass rush pressure come in against Prague and also against Milan. It looked a lot more improved from what we saw from the Surge game. I think that Kendra Ellison is getting that down. It took a couple weeks for it to come in, but that defensive line is fucking terrifying with Evans Yoruba and just the amount of guys they have that can rush the passer. The Raiders' offensive line isn't very good, and I think they'll be able to get a good couple of sacks with that pressure. Raiders' third down percentage. The Raiders wouldn't, the Raiders were pretty good in third down against a bad Dragons team, granted, but they were able to get 9 out of 14 on third down conversions. Again, it's the Dragons, but it's an important thing to mention, and I think they're going to have to lock them up on those, otherwise their sustained drives are going to get tired. I think they can do that. I think that the Munich Ravens are the very clear favourites here. For the Raiders, deep ball awareness I think is going to be an important factor. The Munich Ravens have stepped it up in the last couple of games with their deep balls. Marvin Rouge had a really good game just the other week. So Dolores Regler had 2 deep touchdowns and could have had another one if it wasn't for flags and stuff being thrown. But they need to be aware of that. They need to make the adjustments to that. I don't think they can sit too shallow, otherwise they're going to get one over the top. We know that Chad Jeffries more than enough has the arm to hurt him deep. Continuing to run, they had a lot of success on the inside run against the Dragons. Again, it's against a bad Dragons team. But if they can continue that inside run with Bonazzi, with Tonko, with Hasselvanta, there's 3 really good running backs. And I think that they could tire out the defense of the interior line. It's a very hard interior line to tire out. I think that'll be a big part of it, just keeping the run consistent. Again, we don't really know what's going on with the Raiders situation. I think I know who they have in, and a run game would help him set up a lot of what he can offer. Offensive, what the fuck? 3 quarterbacks in 3 weeks is deplorable. It's not good. It's really, really not good. Fulford got cut. Casey Martin got brought in. They've said they're kind of going to bring him in for 1 game. They haven't announced officially of this yet who they're going to bring in, but I am 99% sure I know who they're going to bring in. He's a very talented quarterback. However, it's a very short week, like I've said before, limited playbook. The offensive performance last week was in stark contrast for what we've seen all season. The receivers running more diverse routes. The protection was better. The offensive play calling was better. He had more time to throw the ball. I don't know what the fuck happened in the first 2 weeks and why it's so different in the 3rd week, but whatever you did in the 3rd week, do that in the 4th week because it looked a lot better. Otherwise, if they go back to what they were doing in week 1 and 2, they're going to have a lot of issues. I am still going to go for a Munich win. I'm going to go for 35-21. I said before the season, I think the Raiders are going to have a fall off, and I think that they still are going to. I think Munich step up and maintain just the kind of near top 5 status that they have. Prague versus Hamburg, another rematch. It was a big win for Hamburg in the last time. This is kind of when Prague gave me some hope, and then they've kind of snatched it away. They've looked rather poor in the last couple of games. The big key for them at the moment has to be heavy protection. I don't care how many people you gotta have in that backfield to protect Kyrie Lyles or Adam or Zero. Do it. Bring in more tight ends. Play heavy sets with eligible linemen. I don't care. Do what you need to do, otherwise you're not going to get any offensive yards. We saw it last week against the Ravens. They couldn't do anything. It was just Lawrence out there protecting. Get the man some help. Get Lyles some help. Get the running back some help. Run extremely big packages. Heavy run no matter what. Now Lyles is a mobile quarterback, but the receivers are also very depleted. Get them involved in the run game if you need to. Redeem Kalius. Get him the ball in the hands on short screens or jet sweeps. Other than that, though, it's got to be Zoleka and Zero. Double Z. Just run the fucking ball. I don't care how many times. Just run the ball. Tire out Hamburg. Keep your defense rested because they're going to have to deal with Jarvis. Just run constantly. That's what I would want to see from Prague. I don't care if both carries for the running backs are over 25. Just run the damn ball. Like, even if it ain't working, I don't care if it's 3rd and fucking 12. Run the ball. Because they've really struggled with passing. A lot of deep and explosive plays have also been allowed defensively and offensively. Those big tackles for loss have killed them. Those big turnovers, those big momentum plays we talked about a few weeks ago have killed them every single week. They've got to try and figure out a way to stop that, whether it's those big packages or trying out some different stuff offensively or trying out some different stuff defensively. They need to do something. For Hamburg, mentioned him a second ago, get Jarvis the ball. Get the ball in Jarvis' hands. He's the best receiver they have. He's the best offensive weapon they have. It makes sense that he's such a good rack threat that you give him the ball. He's going to be faster than all Prague's defensive backs. He's more shifty than Prague's defensive backs. And he's just going to be a serious problem, as he always is. Simple O and run variety. I was, Javarian Smith, I don't have as an elite quarterback at the moment. I'm still kind of judging him. It's kind of hard with the kind of 2 games we have on tape. But I think they got to simplify the offense. It looked kind of poor last week. He didn't really get much going. And they have 2 very capable running backs, maybe even 3. Just run the variety. It's kind of simple. I think this will be, if it was my perfect world, we'd see a lot of runs between both teams. Humadi, Harding Canido, it's a good 1-2 punch. Allow them to help Smith, who can then get the ball to Jarvis. Also, with those heavy runs, it gives more of a defense to creep down and give the ball to Jarvis again over the top. Run defense, they don't have a very good run defense, to be honest. They've kind of been run all over a few times, especially by Paris. Paris ran the fuck out of Hamburg. That needs to improve, and especially with 2 very capable backs in Zuleka and Zero. And of course, if I'm telling them to run the damn ball so much, they're going to need to improve the run defense. It's kind of like both teams need to do a very similar thing, in my opinion. I'm still going to go for Hamburg to win. I think that they're going to win 35-17. I think it's going to be quite a comfortable one, and Prague kind of extend their big losses. And that is it. That's a full week 4 breakdown. What I think teams have to do to win, what I think will cause teams to lose. It's going to be a crazy week again. A lot of rivalries, everything's kind of going on with the quarterback situations. Multiple teams with quarterback changes, of course. Wroclaw and Madrid and the Raiders. That's just at least 3 that we know of at the current point of filming this video. So it's going to be a very what the fuck is like really going on kind of week, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to be streaming, of course, probably the Paris and Fire game, and then maybe another one. I'll be streaming a couple times, so make sure you tune in for that. I'll be doing another video at some point this week, whether it's an eval or whatever. If you guys have suggestions, I'm always up for talking about different stuff or evaluating certain players or looking at whatever you guys want. Support's been crazy. I say it's every time, but we've had a big influx with subscribers because of the ELF Live that was on with Nick, and yeah. Hope you guys are doing well. I don't really have much else to report. I want to do a video where I talk about how I would build another Monarchs team and just the players I would include in that team. I think that would be an interesting watch for some fans. Yeah, all good. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. See you later. Goodbye.